Welcome to What's the Effort?
What the F?
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I almost completely blew it.
You did
I
great.
almost ended it before it started, all because I am so excited. Today, I have Jamil Damji on What the Effie. And all I can say is, what the effing's going on? I'm so excited. Thank you, Jamil, very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm really impressed with what you got going on here, Effie. It's a great podcast. I talked to Bobby when he was on your one of the episodes a little while back, and he said it was just so much fun. And so I thought, well, how come Effie hasn't asked me to be on her podcast yet? And so when I saw you, I was like, hey, what the Effie? How come you haven't put me on your podcast yet? And here we are.
Oh my God. I cannot tell you how you shocked me when you did that. I was like, what did you just say? And I was like, you're asking me? And I was just blown away. I was blown away. But you did make me realize that honestly, I should have asked you earlier.
Oh, that's
Because
okay. Everything happens the way it's supposed to.
I
So,
suppose, I suppose.
yeah, I'm never one to look back at things and say, "Oh, coulda, shoulda, woulda, what if," because I think even when it goes away that maybe we didn't intention or that we would rather it had not gone, there's always so many nuggets in the lessons that you get from things going in other directions than you hope. And I know that those lessons are all necessary and a part of our journey. So I love that.
Yeah, I agree. But it was also mindset, right? I'd
Sure.
already had you on for the Canucks Club, Sub 2 Canucks Club, and I had met with you enough times that I should have felt more comfortable. It's just that you're a bit of a god, and I was like,
Normal dude here, normal guy with I absolutely adore you, and I adore the entire sub two community, the Astro communities, family member here. So anytime and any place that I can be supportive of you guys, I'm always here.
Well, we know you're always here because we see you and Pace like this. And there are a few other people that he's close to, but you guys have such a great friendship and, you've done a lot together. So I feel the same way. I know that we all feel that if we're not in Astro, that's okay because we still get a bit of you.
Yep.
And same with TTP and all. So thank you for that for sure.
Of course.
Now I'm going to start to dig in, if I may, a little bit.
Sure.
I usually ask people about their childhood, and yours is rather interesting because you started in the States, right? You were born in the States?
I was born in Los Angeles, correct?
Right. And you left at 9 to go to
5.
Oh, at 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was really young when we moved to Canada. I don't even actually remember much of living in Los Angeles between the ages of 1 to 5. I was, probably still drooling and pooping my pants a lot. So
Not at 5.
not at 5, but I don't have a lot of memory of it. Right. And so I really just remember being in Canada from my early days. And so although I was born in the United States, my first memories are really in Calgary, Alberta, where my parents moved from LA.
Got it. So when did you have your first sense of self? Like little. By the time you're 5, you are interacting with other children, and how would you have described yourself, or when you came into the early grades of 1 to 4, let's say grade 1 to 4, what were you like? Were you quiet? Were you outgoing?
Great question. I was trouble. I was really talkative, really I could be disruptive, always kind of the instigator clown in the in the room trying to rile people up or just get a laugh, right? And so
So you
I,
were already a comedian.
I was already, very, very much in that frequency of just wanting to be happy and wanting to be joyful. But the reality is I also grew up in Calgary, Alberta, in the '80s, and it was a different place in the '80s. Canada has become very multicultural and very accepting and very much open to so many different communities and cultures. In the 1980s, however, they were very resistant.
Oh,
And
resistant. That's
yeah,
a nice way of saying racist.
well,
uh, no, I understand.
it was hard, right? It was
Yeah.
it was difficult because we were some of the first families coming into the northeast part or northeast quadrant of Calgary, which ultimately became, primarily Indian over time. But in that time, it wasn't, right? Just like in Compton, once upon a time was farmland, and it was in Los Angeles. It was mainly inhabited by Caucasian people, and then obviously Compton changed. It was very much like that in my quadrant of Calgary. It was mainly Canadians from Europe,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden we show up, and it wasn't an easy integration. And so
Yeah.
I dealt with a lot of that growing up, and I had a lot of interesting experiences that toughened me up, that made me really have to dim that joyful part of myself, that piece of me that the free spirit,
Mhm.
the jovial Jamil had to take a back seat, and a more rugged, rough, and protective version of me had to develop. And so,
Interesting.
it was a part of my personality that I ended up having to then, as an adult, deal with, so that I could let the jovial guy come back and drive the car. But survival is what it is, right? And so you create these
Yeah.
different things so that you can be, so that you can make it. And so that was, what I evolved into quite young,
Mhm.
was more of a like tough guy. I had to be
Yeah.
a certain way in order to just make it.
Right. Jamil, I think it was even worse before you came, because I arrived in the very last day of 1959. By the time I went to grade one, they did the little surveys, and they said, "You're white and you're white, and Effie, you're not white." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Non-white. You tick not white. You're not white." And I was like, "Really?" I thought my skin was like everybody else. So I
What
was
did they
like, "Not
classify
white."
you as? What was that?
Other,
Oh,
other,
other. Wow.
because at that time, Italians and Greeks, both in the US and Vancouver, Canada, were seen as slothy, and
Wow.
therefore they were not allowed to be considered white. Fast forward to grade four, and they said, okay, every year they did these surveys. Okay, oh, Effie, now you're white. And I was like, now I'm white? Okay,
It's
this
so
world
good.
is effed up, effing crazy. That's when I
Wow.
realized that, this whole thing that we're being sold about what is what
Yeah.
was bullshit.
Yeah.
Because,
Absolutely.
honestly, I hadn't turned any whiter. But what had happened was enough other immigrants came from other parts of the world that both Canada and America was trying to figure out how to keep whites as the majority.
Yeah.
And they allowed the Italians and Greeks into the club.
My goodness.
Isn't that whack?
I had no idea. You just enlightened me today on an entire part of the history of how that happened, that I was unaware of. So thanks for the history lesson. That was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
I saw it again when, fast forward when I was working with PhD programs at UC Davis, and it was covered the history of, diversity. And I was like, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. How cool.
I remember it. They called me non-white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that is troubling. It's very
Yeah.
upsetting. And um, were you able to kind of deal with it as a little kid, as a elementary, high school kid, or did you get into trouble with, the police or the teachers?
Yeah, all of it. I got into all kinds of trouble. Um, and and it's unfortunate, right? I had to go through a lot of tough lessons to become who I am now. But back then it was really tough. And I think the thing is that it made me who I am. I don't have any like thoughts of oh, that sucks, or I'm not angry about any of it. I don't have a victim mindset whatsoever about it all. I'm grateful for every experience, painful and pleasure, because I know that it molded me, right, and it made me who I am today, and it's given me compassion, and it's given me an opportunity to be grateful, and it's given me forgiveness and so many lessons that I need. And so that is a beautiful thing, and I'm grateful for that. I'm you know the thing that was really interesting is that there was one boy specifically who was really really terrible, and I remember my parents used to go to the principal and try to get help, right? To say, my son he's just getting violently beat up constantly by this one gentleman, one kid. And can you guys do something about it? And, even the administration at that time was very, resistant because they would say to my parents, well, he has to be doing something to be deserving of this because, this young man Shane is not he's just not a bad guy. We've seen Jamil, we've seen how he is, and we think it's his fault. And it was,
Oh,
yeah, it was a lot of that, right? And so what's interesting is that man, he became an adult, obviously he's serving life in jail for torture and murder. So that's what he turned into, right? And I was like the first thing he was torturing in as a young boy. And so but that was the way that even the school system was set up, right? So
yeah.
again, nothing. I have no animosity. I have no negativity towards it. I'm grateful that I had the experience
Mhm.
because it made me better. And I do believe that you have to go through everything. I had to go through all of that to be sitting in this seat right now, in my life, in this success, in this version. I had not even one thing could have been different because the entire world would have
Jamil,
been different.
you are known for mindset. And I don't know if you recall this, but the first time I met you was at, um, it wasn't the mastermind, it was the um, golden ticket.
Yeah.
And you came on and you voiced this opinion. And I looked at you and I said, no way. I am not going to be thankful for everything. Why would I be thankful? And I really argued with you.
Hmm.
And I felt like, wow, we're like, I really like you, but I thought we're different cloths. Well,
Hmm.
it's been 2 years now. It's been 2 years. And I have pretty much come to embrace what you are saying.
Wow.
It took me this long, but it wasn't the length of time as much as it was the examples of people that I have met who understand that and have gone through it. And when you look at someone like yourself or anyone that is, especially someone who is uh, a mentor, someone that you look up to, you can agree much more than than I could of myself because it just hurt so much. It felt like I was giving the abuser a free pass,
Sure.
but it has nothing to do with them.
No,
It
it's
has
you.
to
It's
do
all
with
you.
yourself. Yep,
Exactly.
yep, yep. And it took me such a long time.
Yeah.
So that freedom, it's an interesting one because if I had not had the animosity towards that person who was my father, I
Hmm.
wouldn't have fought like I did for my rightful well, I didn't get my rightful share of the estate, but something more than nothing. He wanted to write me out completely. and it was my mom and I that had built it. And he had lots of abuse, concussions, right? The whole thing. And I think I would not have been where I am now had it been that he wasn't as abusive.
Sure.
So it is interesting to see. It's interesting to see that lesson, really is something that has come through to me, and that I'd like to say thank you for personally.
Oh, thank you, Effie. I very clearly remember the challenge when we were talking, because you were vocal, and you were, I could see, almost visibly upset with what I had said, and I understood it. I did, and I understood why you were saying what you, because I was in the same spot. I remember being so angry myself at the people that had hurt me, and there were moments, Effie, I'll be very transparent here and vulnerable. I was mad at God.
Yeah.
I was angry at our creator for having, why was I in this spot? Why are there people who get to be born and be kings and have resources and have anything that they could possibly want to survive or need to survive and more? And here we are, and my mom is an incredible human. My father is an incredible human. We're good people. We care about people, and we just we have nothing,
Right.
right? And so that was my victim mentality, to be honest. Like, and I was
Yeah.
victimizing myself, and I wasn't empowering myself to do something about it, right? And that's the thing that I had to take control of. And I think when I did take control of it, it's interesting. I was much older, in my 20s. It was when I didn't get into medical school. And
Oh, you were a good Indian son.
yeah, I
You
tried. I
applied.
tried. I really did try, even though I was getting into trouble, and I kind of had this double life. I was like really good at school, right? Like, I had a near 4.0 GPA, Dean's List at the University of Calgary in the Faculty of Science. I did really well on the MCATs. In fact, I did so well. Like, I have a cousin who is a doctor. He and I have the same last name, and he cheated off me on the MCAT, and he actually got into medical school. I was rejected. And
Why?
that to me, they didn't give you a real answer. They just said, thank you so much. After consideration, we feel it would be better for you to try again sometime in the future. And we think you're a great applicant, and you'll one day, whatever. It was a really nice way of saying not now. And
Yeah.
I realized that day that there was another person, that I allowed some man or some woman the dominion, the agency over my life, to make a decision that literally had my entire life path in that person's hands, and I was never going to let that happen again.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good
And
for
so
you.
that was it. That's when I made the decision that I wasn't going to ever let somebody else decide.
So I've been wondering about this question, and I wonder if that was the time. I wanted to know, given that you had an upbringing, that you moved to Calgary and maybe, things were tough. When did you realize that you were destined for something bigger than most people? What made you know it?
There's I think when we're kids, we all kind of have that in us, right? We all have this idea in us that there's something about us. Like, we feel special. We feel like maybe we're different, or that we have a desire in us, or that we can do that thing, that we can be what we see out there, that we're proud of, that we could be celebrated,
Right.
that we could be the professional boxer, that we could be the singer, we could be the dancer, we could be the things. And I would see that, and I could see that I'm like that. I'm a person. That's a person. I can do that. And so I always had that in me to say, I would look at the example and say, that's for me too. I could do that. I want to be like that. And what I think many of us as children have that, and society and conditioning and life and our friends and our family and all the trauma it takes it away.
Knocks it out.
It knocks it out. It puts all of these layers of you're not enough, you're not worthy, it'll never be you, and it keeps piling that onto us until that extinguishes in some people.
Mhm.
And that to me is the real, that's the crime,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
right?
And for me, it was that I was born a girl, so there was no way to get out of it.
Yeah, right. Well, and for me, it was born different too. Even how I looked, there was no way
Yeah.
out for me either, right? I was like, I'm stuck in this thing. And on top of that, I was overweight almost my whole life, right? Like always a chubby guy, and so that also isn't helpful either, because when you're not in, when you don't look like other people, and then you're also what people consider not healthy looking or whatever, that's also another reason why folks will be kind of different, or treat you differently. But in whatever case, I knew that I could do all of the things that I could see people do, and I don't think I ever let people beat that out of me. I didn't let anyone tell
Okay.
me that wasn't for me.
Okay, so let me ask you, when did you feel it was manifested? Because you went on, now I doubt there'd be very many people that would argue at all that you have been destined for something bigger than most. But at what point in your life did you say yes? Because you went on and you did a lot. I know that in real estate you had started with Rahima, right, in Calgary at first.
Correct. Yeah. Um,
So you kind of got knocked around a bit. Could you kind of bring us through that transition a little bit
yeah.
before you
So
got to
it was
Keighley? But when did you feel yes, I'm doing it?
it was a spiritual thing, to be completely honest. And I haven't talked about this a lot. I actually haven't talked about it at all with anyone. So you're getting a little bit of fresh content here. I had an awakening in my early 20s, and I didn't know what was happening. I actually thought I might be going insane.
Ooh.
And I, so much so that I actually checked into a hospital for to be just make sure that everything was okay.
What did the awakening look like?
It was like a complete teardown of the fake me.
Oh,
Yeah, so and I had built up so many things in me, so that I could be liked, so that I could be a part of the club, so that I could belong, so that I you know so I didn't get beat up. I made up all of these. I made up a version of Jamil that wasn't real. It was a plastic one, right? It was honestly just a complete fiction.
yeah.
And over a matter of 3 days, I had a very interesting auditory hallucination, you may want to call it, voice, whatever. But it was very kind, it was very loving, but it was also very, very uh honest,
And probably serious.
and serious, and it stripped all of that out of me. It literally, it took it all away. And when that was gone, in the matter of to give you how visually what that looked like, before that happened, I used to wear these little blue contact lenses in my eyes, because I thought that was like, I wanted to be
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I looked a certain way, and I did certain things with my hair. Like, it was a whole thing. And when it was at the end of the 3 days, I had ripped the contacts out of my eyes. I had looked at the way that I was, even the clothes that I was wearing, everything I saw, I realized I hadn't done for me. I had done for somebody else, or for to be liked or to belong. And it was the first time I can sense the feeling of like, oh, this is what it feels like to be you.
Wow.
And that, in that time, I knew that I was heading somewhere, because I then started to piece together that the really successful ones in life are the ones who are in their truth, right? And you hear it from Shakespeare to Tupac. It's the same message, Effie, over and over again. To be true,
Yep.
to be true to thyself, and it will set you free. And it's from
Yep.
you. We hear it in literature, you hear it in scripture, you hear it in music, you see it in poetry, you see it in movies, you see it in television. It's the same thing. It's all pointing to the same thing, that the authentic version of you is the one that will be everything. But we have to get to that version in order for our life to open up and become that. And
Right.
and that's when I knew that something more was going to happen. And it did.
Nice. Nice. Wow. Is that why you chose Juice as your movie? I hope you saw some of those.
I did. They were great. I loved Juice. Juice was a great movie. The thing about my relationship with Tupac and why I'm such a fan of his was I can credit his music to my survival in that environment. And I needed that. I needed a guide. I needed somebody in that world that was in my head, that was guiding me through very, very, very traumatic, very violent situations, and also with a tenderness and a connection to spirit at the same time, so that I didn't untether myself to the creator while I was walking in a very shadowed, dark path. And I can credit that I got guided, by him out of that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
That's cool. You never know who you're going to affect. And then, I think that's pretty awesome that did help you for sure. And you and Rahima started with condos. And then when did you come down and how did it go? Because what was the first thing that you tell us about that part? Because am I correct in thinking Keighley was your first big step into the wholesaling world, or I'm still learning a lot about you.
Sure. So no, Keighley is my second go around. Okay. So when I was in Calgary and I thought I invented wholesaling in my first deal, because the funny thing is the internet was brand new and there wasn't any, there was no Cody Sperber. There were no mentors that I could look to. Social media hadn't happened yet. And so information was still very much, you found late night infomercials, Carlton Sheets infomercials was as much as you got from the, learn how to buy real estate with no money down. Right. And so it's like that's where you would see those kinds of commercials, and you would see those commercials and you'd be like, oh, that's all fake. Right. And so I realized that I got myself into a situation where I was able to wholesale my first property, but I didn't know how to do it because I had no money. And so how I actually figured out the process of a double escrow was cold calling real estate attorneys. And I got all the way down to the letter S. A lawyer named David Steed answered his own phone because he wasn't established enough to have a secretary yet. And I told him my situation. I said, I have a woman who will sell me a house for $350,000. I have a gentleman who wants to buy the house so he can tear it down and build a luxury duplex on it. And he'll pay $400,000. And I don't know how to find the $350,000 to buy the house so that I can sell it to the man for $400,000. And he'll buy it the same day. Like, I don't even need the money for long. I just don't know what to do. And the lawyer said, oh, what you're talking about is called a skip transfer. And I'm like, oh, what? He said, a skip transfer. Here's how you're going to do it. I'm going to send you an email with a contract on it. You're going to print out 2 of those contracts, and you're going to have one contract where your name is going to be on the buyer line and the lady who's selling you the property is going to be on the seller line. And he showed me exactly, where all the things were. He's like, you're going to put the $350,000 price here, and all of
Yep.
these other dates have to line up. So the closing date has to line up, your earnest deposit, which is going to be your initial good faith deposit. You'll bring that to my office so that I'll start doing the conveyancing.
How cool.
Yeah, he said all of these things have to be the same. And then on the second contract, you'll be the seller and you'll put the gentleman's name there on the buyer line. And then you're going to write $400,000 on the price there. And what I'll do is, because you've had these things closing on the same day, I'll use the funds from your second escrow to close your first file. And then the money in the middle is what you'll get. And I was like, okay, that's incredible. And so I did that, right? And it ended up, sorry, 1 second. I just have to, it ended up giving me a tremendous leg up, right? Because I did my first deal. I made more money in that deal than I'd ever seen in my entire life. It was like $47,000 after I paid the attorney and I had, the cashier's check.
Nice.
Effie, I was so scared about that I didn't cash that check for like 4 months. Yeah, I had it just folded up in my wallet and I just stare at it all the time. And then
weren't you worried about losing your wallet?
No, I mean, I didn't think about that, but I would look at it all the time. And then my sister was like, that's going to expire. You have to cash that. And so I was like, okay. So then I opened a bank account, I cashed it, and the rest was history. I started really, really scaling and doing that just as a one-man show. But, I was driving around looking for rent signs. I would get the newspaper and I'd look into classifieds and I'd go to the for rent section there. And that's how I would do my lead generation. Those were my lists, right?
Right.
And I got to a point where I wholesaled so many homes, and then I went to apartment buildings and I started wholesaling apartment buildings because I started
the buildings themselves or units?
Yeah, the buildings themselves. So I realized anywhere there was construction, there was an opportunity, right? Because the people I was selling these houses to, they were just knocking them down and making duplexes. And so I would drive around the city and I'd see these signs on these apartment buildings that had like they were doing condo conversions there, right? So they were like new condos being built. Come see our sales center in this unit. And I'd look and it was an old apartment building still, but they had this like drawing of what it was going to look like and pictures of what the units would look like on the billboard, on the sign. And I was like, okay, I get it. These guys are buyers. So then I just started calling the number on the sign. And I'd say, hey, are you guys looking for old apartment buildings to do this with? And they're like, all the time. Okay, what do you need? Well, we need to have at least 50% parking in order for it to become a condo. We need, if there's 18 units in the building, I need 9 parking spots. And he said, that's a deal breaker. If we don't have enough parking, I can't do the deal. He says, anything else, I can work around. I don't like buildings that are all 1 bedrooms. I like 50-50, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. If there's some 3 bedrooms, even better.
Wow.
But if you have something, let me know. So then I started driving around town calling little so I noticed that when the for rent sign was handwritten, right, with a phone number there, and it would just be stuck in the ground, no property management company, that was a self-managed building, right? And so when it was a self-managed building, that means that the owner is the guy who's going to pick up the phone when I call to, the for rent sign. And so I would be driving up and down town looking at these buildings, and then I started wholesaling apartment buildings. And I would make $100,000 on each one of those flips. Wow. It was insane.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money for a young man in his 20s,
You're not kidding. Back then? Wow.
Yeah, and I did what anybody in their 20s would do. I blew it all. I bought my mom a house on the lake.
Oh, that's not blowing it.
Well, you'll see what happens. I bought myself a house overlooking the city. I bought $1 million worth of cars. It was pretty stupid. And I was in my 20s. I had a really, really expensive toxic girlfriend, and all the things, right? Like all the things you would do at that time that you like the
How,
typical.
how long did it take before you realized you can't sustain that?
Well, what ends up happening is there is a day where I actually meet the guy who's been buying these buildings from me in person. I was normally just dealing with his right hand man. This guy John, he had a really bad toupee. Um, and I'll never forget it. It was like it was so bad, like it would unstick, in parts. And so he'd like I'd see him, and his like hair would be like coming off, just terrible. And so, sorry if John, if you're watching this right now, you need some glue. You got a little bit of glue right here, your hairs. But anyways, so the one day the boss man wants to meet me, and so he pulls up to a building that I'm trying to sell these guys, and he pulls up in a Rolls Royce, and he's this dumpy little like Humpty Dumpty kind of looking dude, balding, real funny looking guy, and then out of the passenger side is probably the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, that's how it happens.
Yeah, but I don't know if you want that kind of woman.
Well, the funny thing is again, I'm learning my way through, right? I don't know any of it, right? Like, so I'm learning, and there's no roadmap for me. Again, I don't have mentors at the time. I'm just kind of bumping my head against the wall, doing it all, right? And so I'd make a decision that I'm going to stop wholesaling, and I'm going to do what he does. I'm going to develop instead. I'm going to, the next buildings that I get under contract, my sister and I are going to close them. We're going to buy them, and we're going to do the conversions ourselves. And
wow,
so,
good for you.
And so we do, right? We close on 4 buildings. Now, I didn't have the best credit, so I needed help from my mom and dad to finance the construction loans on these. Well, Effie, this is 2007.
Uh-oh.
Yep. And so come 2008, all of my loans get called because the credit crisis happens. And in Canada, it's very different in 2008. In Canada is very different than it is in the United States. There are laws that protect people in the United States against predatory lending. In Canada, the lenders are the government. And it's a very thin line between banking and government there. And so they literally they can do whatever they want. And they took those buildings back because they said that all of my, my pre-sales that I had gotten my financing based off of, they now no longer qualified under the new lending guidelines, right? Because of the credit crunch.
Oh boy.
And so now, because they gave me the financing based off of those pre-sales, because those pre-sales are no longer there, they called the loans. And so all the money that we had put down for down payments and in construction was gone.
Oh boy.
And so we go from top of the mountain, millions of dollars made, millions of dollars invested into these buildings. But the saddest part is that mom and dad had signed personal guarantees on the construction loans. And so I not only...
What happened in their situation?
They lost everything. So they came and they took mom and dad's house. They took my house. They took all the cars. They took mom's car. And so like, it was like, we went from the fall from grace was the worst, right? We went from, living on the lake, I had that beautiful house overlooking the city with all the cars. And we went from all of that to mom, dad, sister, niece, 150-pound dog, cat, and me in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in the hood.
Wow.
So it was a real kick in the kneecaps. The worst thing I'd ever experienced in that time. And I was really, really, really low. And that's when I made a decision that I kind of wanted to I stepped away from real estate because I didn't realize that there was going to be another go around for me in the United States in this business. I was just thinking like real estate sucks because, the lenders can just come and take stuff. Right. and so like it's not safe. And so I had this whole idea in my head that real estate investment was unsafe because lenders made the rules and they can just take whatever they want. And
Yep.
so I ended up moving to Los Angeles and at that time to pursue comedy. And that's, where
Well,
that's
it's
when I
good that in your personality or in your heart, you still had space for humor
I had no choice but to
because
laugh
it
at
can
it.
be hard to laugh.
I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to laugh at what had happened because it was like, look at what you did, man. You saw Humpty Dumpty in a Rolls Royce with a beautiful woman, and you that's what you followed. That was the reason why you risked all of it. And then I had to check myself. I had to like understand my motivations and like, why was I making the decisions I was making and where were those decisions coming from? And it really, again, it's another evolution, right? It was an opportunity for me to really get to know me better. And it brought us to the United States, which was also, part of the plan because I go to LA, I start doing, open mics and comedy, but you can't survive like that. It's, I did it for a few years, but there was no money coming in. And so I revert back to what I know, which is wholesaling. Right. So then I take a look over at Phoenix, and in Phoenix, it's only a short drive from LA, 5-hour drive. And so I can see that you can buy property in Phoenix for like $20,000-$30,000 at the time. Right. This is like 2010 to 2010 ish.
Okay.
And these properties were once like worth 400 grand, and now they're selling them for like 20,000-30,000, and they rent for like 800 for $900 a month. So like, where are you going to get something you can pay $20,000 for that you can rent for 800 a month? I mean, this is like ridiculous. Right. So then I started putting those properties under contract. And when it was coming close to closing time, I didn't have the money. What did I do? I wrote an ad on Craigslist, and then I did my first wholesale deal in the United States. I put an ad up. I put a property under contract, and I put an ad up on Craigslist. And in 15 minutes, I had a guy call me and offer me $18,000 more than what my contracts were. And I was like,
oh, that's nice.
I just made $18,000 in 15 minutes. What am I doing in LA?
Right.
And then
proof of concept, right?
Yeah. And that's when I made the decision to move. So it was actually my birthday. I've got the tattoo on my knuckles here, 12/12/12. It was my golden birthday. I packed a U-Haul and I drove from Los Angeles to Phoenix, Arizona, and that started chapter 2.
Wow, how cool.
Mm-hmm.
How cool. Especially that it happened on your birthday. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, pretty cool.
When you came to or went to Phoenix, did the family come with, or did you go by yourself, or what was the personal situation?
Well, I had just gotten engaged to Nat, and she was in Canada, and mom and dad were working on getting actually they had finally gotten their visas to come live in the United States because I had sponsored them. And so mom and dad and my sister were in the States now. My wife, my fiance at the time we were working on. And then she came December 31st, 2013. So I had spent a little bit of time building things up while we were still working out her immigration. And then she moved down and we started. Now, again, when we first started, I didn't have a lot, even though I made some deals here and there. I hadn't become this yet. Right. So I was still, and especially after having a wedding, weddings are expensive. Natalie and I it was very humble, right? We lived in a little apartment. We didn't have a bed frame. Our mattress was on the floor. That's just, we were just surviving. We were just doing our best.
Right.
And then Keighley happens. And,
oh, you're breaking out on me. Slow it down a bit. You're froze.
so I said, you know, we had we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a bed frame. Our mattress was on the floor, and but I was really trying, and it was actually what really changed my life was my wife got sick. She ended up getting a a virus, or like it was a bacteria called C. diff, and
Hmm.
it's very dangerous. It's a super bug, and
Mm.
it can't be killed with regular antibiotics.
Mm.
And so we didn't know it was C. diff at the time. She was just violently ill, and we finally get a test result back, and they say, okay, it's C. diff, and she's going to need this very rare antibiotic, and it's $6,000,
Eh.
and I don't have it. And so that afternoon, it was a Sunday, and I connected the dots that actually pushed me into Keighley happening. So, um,
Interesting.
yeah, I was so scared that I was going to lose her. I,
Yeah, I'll bet.
I have a deal under contract at the time, and I'm desperately trying to find a buyer. And I'm trolling Facebook, like, trying to DM people and see if anyone wants to see this. And there's a really big wholesaler in Phoenix named Chris Iman, who
Okay.
I DM, and he gives me his phone number, and I text him and I send him the details. And then he says, meet me there. And so I get in my car and I go, and he walks it and says, I'll take it. And I'm like, amazing. It closes in a week. And I had a $10,000 assignment fee on it. And I said, listen, I
Mm.
have to ask you a favor. And I know you don't know me, but if you would do this, it would mean the world to me, and I'll do business with you forever. But I I need $6,000 tomorrow. So what if I take my $10,000 assignment fee and I make it six, and you prepay it to me? I know that doesn't put you in a secure place. I know you probably should just get the title report from the title company tomorrow morning. But if you get the title report and it's clear, and if you get a clear, if the escrow company tells you that you're okay, that the file's happening, and that everything looks good, would you do that for me?
Did you explain why?
Yeah.
Good.
And he said, he's like, you know what, you're right. I don't have anything. I don't know you. But I do know that if you screw me, you'll never do business in this town again. So I'll do it. He's like,
Okay.
I'll call the title company tomorrow, and I'll get all the check all the boxes. And if it all makes sense, swing by the office and I'll have the money for you.
Oh, what a relief that must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. And did you do business with Chris again?
For years.
Good.
We're still really good friends. I actually took
Good.
the concept of Keighley to him first, and he passed on it.
Oh, wait a minute. So you came up with the idea on your own. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And then you took it to him and he didn't see the value?
He's like, he was just in a different season of his life. He's like, that's too much work, man. He was like, he was in this season, and he's still in this season of his life where he's in the Bahamas all the time. He's got this big, 100-foot yacht. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need to be having this big company
Yeah.
doing all, he was really happy in his situation, in his world. And so,
But I'm sure he'd agree that it'd be a pretty nice gig to have if you didn't have one. I mean, I understand his position in life,
yeah.
but pretty sweet.
Oh, he regrets it. In fact, he was mad at me for a year afterwards because he saw how successful it got and that it went crazy, and he was angry at me about it. And then he finally came around and was like, it's not you, it was my fault. I said, no, I understand. He's like, but man, that sucks. And I'm like,
Totally.
I did bring it to you first, man. You passed. you know.
Gotcha.
But it wouldn't have happened with him anyways. It wouldn't have became what it became because he didn't have the skills Josiah and Hunter have. So he needed to pass in order for it to become what it became, right?
So you did that with Josiah and
Yeah,
Hunter?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Is that how you first met Pace?
No, Pace and Josiah know each other through me. I met Pace because
Oh,
I met Pace because Pace had sent me a DM because he was doing business with a really bad dude here in town who was ripping him off, and I had actually uncovered that the guy was in the Ponzi scheme, and you know, Pace had asked me, he's like, "What do you know about this guy?" And I said, "Hey, why don't we meet for lunch?" And so we meet at a grocery store actually, and he buys me a sandwich, and we're talking, and I said, "Listen, man, how much do you have with this guy right now?" He's like, $250,000. I'm like, you lost it. You've lost it. You're not getting it back. And
oh,
I said, if I was you, I'd run. Just run. You know, run. That's your best plan right now is to leave it. Unfortunately, he didn't listen, and he gave him another.
I don't know that many people. He gave him more? Okay.
He gave him
Wait a minute. I don't know about running. I might have wanted to fight him, but I don't know. I sure as hell wouldn't give him more.
Well, he was trying to help him bail him out. He was trying to get him out of the situation, so he gave him another $1 million.
Oh. And that's how you guys met?
Yes, how we met. And then he was, he filed bankruptcy on Pace, and so he had basically he bankrupted Pace, and then Pace came to me and said, "I need help. I'm going to start wholesaling, and can you dispo for me?" And
nice.
And that was it. And then so Pace and I did, a few hundred deals like that, and we struck up a really beautiful friendship. I helped him in the early days there really sell some things that he needed to sell fast so that he could get his hands on money to keep the family going. And so we just had a real friendship. It was a real friendship that was just based off of a mutual respect and wanting to help each other. And that's why I think it's such a cool thing, and why it's lasted so long, and why we still, have that tight bond, is that you kind of go through trauma, and the people who are there with you and things are hard are the ones you love the most, right? Because they help you get through. And so him and I have had that bond with each other because of that, I think.
Yeah. I'm sure that goes a long way, as well as the fact that, you have good times together too.
So many.
Sure.
So many. I mean, he's like one of the best people I know, right? Like, we've had so much fun, and he taught me all about social media. I wasn't really on social media at the time. And so he gave me a massive education, and then look at all the things that have happened to me because of social media. So even though I kind of helped him in that spot, he helped me become what I became, because I wouldn't have had this knowledge. I wouldn't have done any of these things. We got the TV show because of a video we put on his YouTube channel.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Hey, by the way, you did the 2 seasons, right? Mm-hmm. Are you doing a third?
We're going to do a different show. So we're in talks with the networks to create something a little bit different, a little bit more authentic to what we actually do in our lives.
Good.
Pace and I don't necessarily go around painting or, demoing houses and picking paint and tiles in our real life. That's just television. And so we don't want to do that. We want to, if you're going to have a TV show about us, then it needs to be the real us. And so that's
probably going to go a lot further in helping the general public.
I think so. Because
as much as, Triple Digit Flip was highly successful and was fun to watch, it will, what you guys are doing, if you can bring that to the mainstream more, it will take down some walls.
I agree. Yeah. We wholesaled the first we did the first wholesale deal ever on television on that show, which is a big deal, like that they never even talked. The concept was never even talked about, even creative financing was it was introduced on that show in a couple of episodes on the second season. And so I would really love for the next one to be more in the worlds of our lives, like more creative deals, more wholesale deals, and how we work with so many people to help them gain their financial independence. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Exactly. And that's the sort of thing I think that the general public would be very interested in, because when you normally look at celebrities, even, I don't know, you don't look at them quite as giving the same way as you give in the way that Pace gives. I'm sure a lot of people that are not in your circles, not in our world, wouldn't know that. So by getting it on mainstream media, it probably will open some eyes to, the idea of mentoring and learning and helping each other, that sort of thing, for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, Peggy says she's seen every episode.
I love you, Peggy. Thank you.
Peggy, I saw my first episode when I landed in America because I didn't have a TV. I haven't had a TV in 25 years.
Wow.
But it's always been the internet. But my kids had it. So one night I was sitting with them and they're like, okay. And I was like, wait, that's don't change it. They're like, okay. So we watched it together. So I saw that one. But fun. I've seen snippets since then.
Yeah.
But I still don't have a TV. Even though there is a TV on the wall, that's from someone who had left it in this house.
Okay.
I need to have it taken down.
Well, you can stream YouTube and things on your TVs too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, they left 7 of them. So
wow. Big TV people.
Yes, big TV people for sure. So I do think that I have to add again that the mindset that you have brought to the attention of myself and to everyone is probably as valuable as the actual dollars that you have managed to, encourage people to get out there and make. I'd like to, stress that because you do so much. But for me, the way I connected with you the most was to listen to what you're talking about from your heart, and also to watch you and see, how real your challenges still are. And I highly respect what, you're doing with your daughter and, trying to make sure that you change things, that it's better for her. That sort of a mindset is driving me a lot. So I guess it's a little bit selfish, but it's my podcast, so I can say thank you so very much. And if I were going to be a wholesaler, man, I'd be right there. And having said that, Rory De Silva and I are now doing wholesaling.
Amazing.
He's doing most of it, and I'm just bringing the funds and also bringing the attention and getting some things thrown out there. And we're growing. So we're now, we had started in Florida. Now we're working in Atlanta, and we're going to get going in Charlotte, where I'm doing my first co-living house. And I had so many questions I wanted to ask you, but I will just say this, guys. Jamil has been talking about tax liens. You should definitely spend some time on his YouTube to discover some of that, because I thought that was very interesting, Jamil.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. They're so good. It was a new strategy it's not a new strategy. It's a strategy that's been around for a long time, but it's just one that was new to me. And there was a guy that I was buying houses from that I would see, he paid like $8,000 for this thing. Right. And I'm buying it from him for $200. And I say, Will, what the hell? How did you get this for $8,000? And then the house you sold me before that, you paid $6,000 for, and the one before that you paid $12,000 for, and I'm paying you like $200,000 for these things. How are you doing it? And he's like, oh, tax liens and tax deeds. And I was like, well, what does it mean? He's like, oh, it's a big thing. You're gonna, I don't have the time to teach you. Well, a couple of years later, I run into somebody who does, and I learn all about it. And I wholesaled my first tax deed property, lickety split, made money, bought some tax liens. And I'm telling you, that is an incredible strategy, especially if you're working with limited funds. It's a very, very lucrative strategy. And so I'll be coming out with more details, more case studies, and more information on how you can add to your portfolio and get involved in those types of deals.
Well, you heard it from Jamil, but also hear this. I'm going to be right there because I want to learn it too.
Amazing.
So thank you very much, Jamil. Thank you, everyone. And we shall see you next week.
Happy to